Brooklyn in the house. That's what I've been saying before I had to unmute myself. Yeah, the Nets. Let's talk about them. They are a lot of people's favorite team to come out of the East, and not only to do that, but to win the NBA championship. So let's talk about them. Today, we're talking about the Nets and talk about these 4 things right here: what they did in the offseason, what their salary cap situation looks like, what their rotations will look like, and also what their win total will be based on what Vegas says. So if you like these kind of videos, feel free to like this video, go check out others on the channel, and subscribe. By the end of tomorrow, we will have all 30 team previews up and ready. And we got NBA basketball a week from tonight. So let's freaking go. All right, let's jump into it. Nets. What did they do in the offseason? What didn't they do in the offseason? They had an interesting offseason, again, because you have the big 3 in Kyrie Irving, who we'll get to in a minute, Kevin Durant, and James Harden. They didn't have a whole lot of money to be able to work with, to be able to bring in another player. They weren't going to trade one of those big 3. I still don't believe they are going to trade one of those big 3, namely Kyrie Irving. So let's get into it. LaMarcus Aldridge was added back from free agency. You're glad to see that he is back healthy, that he's all good. And yeah, we're good with LaMarcus Aldridge. So solid, forward center to have on the team. DeAndre Bembry, Devontae Cacok, David Duke Jr., James Johnson. Patty Mills is probably the most underrated signing of the offseason. And then Paul Millsap as well. Mills, I think, is just going to be able to provide a spark off the bench. I think he's really solid, and I think he will be really, really good for the team come playoff time too. So we may not see a lot of the fruits of it in the regular season, but in the playoffs, I really believe this is a guy who's going to be able to step up and help this Nets team ultimately win the championship. They also were able to trade for Javon Carter. They did give up Landry Shamet in that draft night trade. So Javon Carter is with the Brooklyn Nets. They drafted Cam Thomas, who is a big talking point. He had a great summer league, fell in the draft. I personally felt like he was an overrated prospect. However, if you're talking about a guy who's going to get picked in the 10s, the early teens, anywhere from 10 to 15, yeah, he probably would have been a bust. But the fact that he dropped to 27 is a huge drop, and he's going to a team that doesn't need like a player to really explode right now. But if you're able to go and get buckets and have, your field goal percentage swing up and down, I think there's a role for Thomas on this team. Daron Sharp, Kessler Edwards, Marcus Zagorowski, and Raekwon Gray. Who did they lose? They lost Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot, Chris Chiozza. Spencer Dinwiddie was traded to the Wizards. Sekou Doumbouya. Jeff Green signed with the Nuggets. Alize Johnson was waived. DeAndre Jordan traded to the Pistons and now is with the Lakers. Jahlil Okafor, Reggie Perry, and Landry Shamet obviously was traded to the Suns. And so that's what they did in the offseason. They kind of re-upped. Again, they're keeping Joe Harris, and we'll get into the roster here right now. But look at who they kept. And again, what rule, and what we're seeing a common flow of just overall, like, we're seeing a common trait here. The good teams in the NBA understand who their best 3 players are, they identify them, and they pay them as such. So the Jazz, other teams, I believe Miami's one. So they're teams in the NBA who need to establish who their best players are and pay them. And if your best player is on his rookie deal still, then go spend money like the Hawks have to be able to build a better team. But let's get back here with the Nets. So James Harden, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving. Durant has his extension done. Harden and Kyrie we're still waiting on them. I think Harden will sign. Kyrie is a whole different situation. I'll take a couple minutes here to address the Kyrie situation because it is a mess, honestly. Kyrie has elected to not get vaccinated, which I don't really care about too much. If you don't want to get vaccinated, don't get vaccinated. That's all right. Here's the thing where I stand though. His situation is a lot different. His job is being a basketball player. That's what his position is. I know he's a human being first. I know he totally has his own free will to do whatever he wants. However, when he's a part of a team effort to win a championship, which they are very, very much able to accomplish. And he wants to sacrifice that for, I don't know exactly what it is. There's a new report recently that Shams literally just tweeted out like the last 20 minutes, says that Net stars, Kyrie remains unvaccinated because he's upset with people who are losing their jobs due to mandates. And look, I try to be transparent on these things and look at it from both sides, like, but ultimately, like, it's kind of his duty. And this is one of those things where it's like, I understand that he has a stance on something, more power to him, but he's hurting his team. He really is. And now I'm going to take the flip end of that statement and kind of twist it now to a narrative that we'll move forward with in the future. But Kyrie, get vaccinated, dude. It will help you and your team accomplish what you need to do. And again, but free will still, right? Joe Harris is also on the team. Had a really rough playoffs. Played really solid in the regular season, but just wasn't shooting great in the playoffs, so that kind of sucked. Patty Mills, obviously raving about him. Bruce Brown is also another good key contributor that they're bringing back. And then let's see here, Javon Carter, Edmund Sumner. We kind of talked about these players. Players that are coming back here are Nicholas Claxton, who they hope to have a big breakout. They also have Blake Griffin, and so these are the guys that are kind of bringing back. So let's look at their rotations. Ultimately, there's nobody on this team that I think is like tradable. There's nobody on this team that I think that is going to like be moved anytime soon. And I think the Nets, really the only transactions they'll make further are going to be the buyout candidates that come up. So is there a Ricky Rubio? Is there a person that comes up in in the buyout market that will enable them to be able to go and get somebody? So let's talk about the Nets starting five. Kyrie Irving, James Harden, Joe Harris, Kevin Durant, Blake Griffin. If the big three are together, they are the best team in the NBA, man. Patrick Beverley. Reserves are going to be Patty Mills, Bruce Brown, James Johnson, Paul Millsap, LaMarcus Aldridge. And then they also have these young guys in Carter, Cam Thomas, Day'Ron Sharpe, and Nick Claxton. The one thing I do wonder with this team as well is I'm trying to figure out what is going to happen with the backup point guard position. Is this a play where potentially Cam Thomas enters the picture? Because I know a lot of people will just say, oh, well, Harden will take over the point guard duties. Absolutely. But then you have a hole at the shooting guard position. Do you start Bruce Brown? Because that probably means more minutes for Cam Thomas. So one of these two dudes, Bruce Brown or Cam Thomas, are going to get a little bit more minutes now if Kyrie doesn't play. So that'll be fun. That'll be interesting to see. Other than that, I think Nick Claxton has been having a lot of good reviews in camp. Does he surpass not only Blake Griffin but also LaMarcus Aldridge to be a starter? We'll see. Still a young player, kind of developing, but ultimately, this is what the Nets are working with. They're a good team. I think them losing Jeff Green was not the greatest of things to happen to them, but they were able to salvage it by, getting some good veterans with like Patty Mills and James Johnson and Paul Millsap. And so anyway, let's move on here and let's talk a little bit about what their win projection is at. Their win projection is at 55.5. I'm going to take the under on this. And the reason I take the under on it is because I just believe this team understands that they're going to win a championship if they play very well, if they are healthy, they are talented enough. If you're telling me that I'm getting a vaccinated Kyrie Irving and a healthy James Harden going into the playoffs next year, I think there's nobody that's going to beat this team. I don't think it's the Lakers. I don't think it's the Bucks. I think the Bucks could potentially get knocked out by the Heat in the playoffs if they match up. But I don't think the Heat or the Bucks are matching with this Nets team. And I don't think anyone coming out west is beating this Nets team. However, I will take the under on this. I think they'll be resting. We saw a lot of this last year with Harden and Kyrie and KD, that they're going to have games where they're going to rest. It's going to be a reality. There's no reason that they should go try to chase the number one seed. In fact, it might be better if they go and not get the number one seed, don't have home court advantage against Milwaukee or Miami, and then Kyrie can play in those games. Who knows? Maybe it's a big old conspiracy theory, but I will take the Nets under the 55.5 wins they're projected at. But look, this team's going to win the championship. They should. Unless like some crazy injury happens again, this team should be at the top of the mountain when it's all said and done. Am I wrong? Tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me in the comments. We have the number 1 seeds in each conference left. If you look through all my videos, you will be able to know which 2 teams those are. Yeah, so tomorrow we'll talk about the East and the West number 1 seeds at length and go from there. So, but yeah, Brooklyn Nets going to win it all anyway, so it doesn't even really matter. Just kidding. Go check out the other videos and subscribe to the channel. And yeah, we'll see you later.